And the gimbal is back. Hello everyone. Chaim Alevsky here about family programs with a relevant thought that we can keep with us every day, at least twice a day. It's actually still from last week's Torah portion, but it's been on my mind all week, so I wanted to share with you. It's about the Shema. We have a biblical instruction, a mitzvah, to recite the Shema twice a day. It's right there in the Torah, in last week's Torah portion of Eschanan, and it is in the words of the Shema itself. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord God, the Lord is one. Baruch Shem Kod Malchus Olam Aved. Blessed be the name of the Lord God forever and ever, etc. And then V'ahavta. The translation is something similar, something like this: V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha. You should love God your God. V'chol levavcha, with all your heart. V'chol nafshecha, with all your soul. V'chol me'odecha, with all your might. And these words that I command you should be al levavcha, on your heart. V'shinantam levanecha. You should speak them. You should teach them. Carefully teach them to your children. V'dibarta bam. And you should speak these words of the Shema. Speak words of the Torah. Words of the Torah. Constantly. And the Torah describes b'shivtecha b'veisecha, when you're sitting in your home, v'lechtecha b'derech, when you're going on your way, like we are right now, running commentary in Central Park, we're learning Torah. V'veshachbecha, when you go to bed, v'vkamecha, and when you wake up. And then it says ukshartam lo al yadecha, then you should bind them as a sign on your arms. That's the Tefilin. It should be also as a sign on your head. That's the Tefilin shel Rosh, the head Tefilin. And you should write these words on the doorpost of the Mezuzah. The Mezuzah means doorpost. There you have it. That's the Shema. The first paragraph of the Shema. There's actually 3 paragraphs of the Shema, but this is the first. Now, the Rebbe takes us on a journey with this Shema, the Shema that everyone knows, and we all say twice a day. But here we have 2 separate inserts I'm going to share with you. One is from the Rebbe's calendar called the Hayom Yom. There's an insert on the Shema, and it says as follows. The Shema tells a story of the soul's journey from before it came down to this world, through its journey here in this world, and then after, in the afterlife. How so? In those words, where it talks about speaking words of Torah, v'dibarta bam, and speak them. Speak these words of Torah. It says, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, when you're sitting in your home. The home of a Jewish soul is in heaven. This is before the soul comes down to earth. It's in heaven, and it's learning Torah. It's speaking words of Torah, v'dibarta bam. That's stage 1. B'shivtecha b'veitecha, when you're in your home. U'v'lechtecha b'derech, and then when the soul journeys from on high, and it comes down on its way, and it comes down through the many levels of spiritual worlds, and it comes down to this world. And in this world, this physical world, material world, it also journeys through many experiences and trials and tribulations and maybe objections to God's light and way of life. That's the journey. Still, says the Shema, and God tells us in the Torah through the Shema, while you're on your journey, v'dibarta bam, speak these words of Torah. They're going to protect you. They're going to keep you safe. They're going to guide you. They will be your light. And then, uveshachbecha, when you lay down, this is referring to when we pass away, our death. When we pass on and our soul goes back to heaven, the Torah that we learned in this world here is going to stay with us and again be our nourishment, our source of inspiration through the world to come. Then, uvkumecha, the final stage, is when you will yet arise again. And that is talking about when Mashiach comes. The Jewish tradition tells us that in the end of days, all people will get up, will arise again. That's when Mashiach comes. And then uvkumecha, then too, the same Torah will be our source of sustenance and light and guidance. So there we have it. Next time you say the Shema, which will be either now, because you haven't yet said it for the morning, or tonight, because you've already said it, and just say it again tonight. You can have that in mind, that the Shema is telling us about the Torah being our sustenance, our journey, our soul's journey's sustenance throughout, from beginning, before, during, and after. That's one thought. In another thought, unrelated, in the 60s, 1964, 5, 8, I'm not sure. In the 60s, the Rebbe spoke. It was, in this talk, he was lamenting about the lost souls in the hippie generation, where people were straying from the Jewish path. And he was talking specifically about the bar mitzvah, bar and bat mitzvah concept. And he said, what happens when a child becomes of age? The parents relate to the child, oh, we have to have a bar mitzvah. And the child says, why? So he says, well, because the neighbors did. What do you mean, why? Because our friends had a bar mitzvah. And we gotta be like the neighbors. We gotta be like our friends. And we have to sign up to a synagogue. And we have to find one that won't be too demanding on us, because, we're just not really that interested. But we just gotta do it, because that's what everyone's doing. So too, says the Rebbe, this happens often in a home. And the discerning child, the wise child, will think about this and say, why? I have to do something because someone else is doing it? It's not a good enough reason. And then they seek meaning elsewhere, as it happened to a whole generation in the 60s, and it's still happening today. And they're looking for meaning. And the Rebbe says that a wise child needs a foundation, needs a source, needs a rock on which to stand. And later on, when the parents complain and ask the child, why are you straying so far from Judaism? The child asks the parent, what foundation have you given me that I should stick with it? So it's our job, says the Rebbe, to be the guiding lights of our children. And the most effective guide and teaching method is by modeling. It says we can't talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. We have to observe, celebrate the Shabbat, bring kosher into our home, and observe the rest of the mitzvot and study the Torah constantly, consistently, in order to keep our flame burning. And this is the soul of the Jew. The Rebbe says that in the same talk. The Rebbe said a child justifiably doesn't want to imitate the neighbors necessarily, because in our essence, in our soul, we are God's people, and we're actually a part of God. And the only one a child naturally wants to imitate, aside from his parents, is God. As the Torah says, just like God is merciful, so you should be merciful. Learn kindness from God, etc. We learn our character traits, our attributes from God. So, says the Rebbe, a child only, when he's told to have a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah because the neighbors have it, and it's like, I don't want to copy my neighbors, I just want to copy God. And not only that, the Rebbe says, you don't even have to copy God because you're part of God, because your soul is part of God, so you have God inside of you. We just need to reveal the God within, reveal who we truly are. So it's our job to be the guiding lights to our children. And when they have a bar and bat mitzvah, the Rebbe also concluded with this, says it's not, you need to know, it's not a graduation from Judaism. It's just an initiation into, a stronger initiation into Judaism, into who we already are. God bless you. Shabbat Shalom. Share it. Take care.